we had a survey this week about Andy Burnham as a possible Labour leader. Are people supportive of Andy Burnham? We're going to have a discussion about that now, but I'd like to kind of start the whole thing by playing a clip from Andy Burnham at the Enough is Enough rally that took place in Manchester earlier, last week. I'm just going to play this clip for you so you can see what he said.
They have spoken to that 1%, and what have they said? That narrow 1% has been promised more deregulation, more privatisation, more Thatcherism. I'm sorry, what? Isn't that exactly what got us in this mess in the first place? Water, gas, electric, buses, trains sent the cost of these essentials soaring to the point where ordinary people can't afford them. And because we don't control those essentials, the only way we can bring prices down now is to throw yet more subsidies at private monopolies, who win come what may. And here's the warning to the Tory party. You may choose to be in denial about your policies, deregulation, privatisation and the damage that's done, but your voters are not. It is time to start curbing the culture of high and excessive pay in this country, which has grown and grown over the last decade or more. It is right to be saying to people in the top half of organisations in the private and public sector that they should be showing pay restraint, pay freezes, pay cuts, to ensure that those beneath have enough to live on. That is the call that we should be making. It's the call that Greater Manchester will be making. It is right to say we want everyone to have a right to good, safe housing, a right to food, as Ian Byrne has so fantastically led that call. And well done to you. People who are worried that the water's going to go over their head, the message from this cathedral tonight to those people is never give up. Help is coming, people are speaking up, people are fighting back. Keep the faith. What we're showing here in this city is that change for the better is possible. And we will fight with all of you for that each and every step of the way. Thanks very much.
So there you see Andy Burnham speaking about public ownership and the problems of privatisation and putting himself forward as a main speaker at the Enough is Enough rally. We had a survey, as I say, about Andy Burnham and find out how supported he was by members of this audience and Labour members as well as non-Labour members. And this is the results from that survey. Do you think Labour has the answer to the cost of energy crisis? Obviously, he was talking about that. Only 15% think that Labour does have the answer to it, which is pretty bad, if you ask me. Do you think a new Labour leader would improve the party? 58% say they think that a new Labour leader would improve the party. I love that there's 31% others. There's lots of people who like to put on the other one. Then this question here, do you think Andy Burnham would make a good Labour leader? 73% say yes. And that's pretty strong majority there for that. And finally, would you support Labour if it were led by Andy Burnham? 59% say yes, 16% say no. Now I've got a mix of people coming on to speak about Andy Burnham and whether he's the answer to this. The first person I'd like to bring on is Ghada Karmi. Are you there, Ghada?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Now, good to see you again. Thank you for coming on. Now, what do you think about Andy Burnham? You seem to be quite supportive when you came back to me on that survey.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you something. If we're thinking of an alternative to Keir Starmer, I think this man would be the only possible one that I can think of. I confess to a bias towards him in the sense that sometime after 2010, I think it might have been 2011 or something like that, my CLP had a dinner at which he was the guest of honor, and I in fact sat next to him. Now, at the time, I was working for the health service, and he was shadow Secretary of State for Health. And we talked about the health service. That's what we talked about all the time. I was so impressed, A, by his grasp of the facts of the situation. Secondly, by his commitment to the health service, which couldn't be doubted. And third, by his determination that if he said to me, if we get back into power, the first thing I will do is repeal the, if you remember, there's the act that was brought in by Andrew Lansley, which really destroyed the health service. He said, the first thing I will do will be to repeal that. And secondly, I will end nationalization in the health service. Now, so we came across, by the way, not only likable, and I think that's very important in a leader, not only personable, but passionate and committed. And I really was quite impressed about that. But having said that, there are objective reasons why I think what I do think, which is that he would be the right person to unseat the incumbent. Well, for a start, his record as mayor of Greater Manchester has been very impressive. It's been impressive for all what I would call the right reasons. That is, he has policies we would describe as socialist, and he has actually put them through. The whole business of transport, the determination to nationalize buses, but also talks about nationalizing the railways, secured funding, lots of funding for the north of England during COVID, his stance on homelessness. He's come out in support of either a universal basic income or raising the basic minimum wage. So his record, I'm saying, in Manchester is evidence, it's actual evidence that he can do these things. But there's more to it than that. He seems to have political ideas. And, you know, what a refreshing change when all you hear is the same middle of the road, copying each other, that kind of thing. He's come out with distinct ideas. He's talked about, apart from the nationalization of railways and other things and the universal income, he's talked about proportional representation. He would like to see that happen. I know it didn't go so far as to say, you know, this is how we will do it before the next election. But he's heading that way. A coalition, people coordinating, working together. That is Labour, Lib Dems, SNP, Welsh National. You know, now that's the kind of thing which, frankly, it impresses me.
Right.
And he talks about devolution of power, and last but not least, his ideas, which I forgot to mention in the thing about the health service, is the integration of social care into the health service, about which he felt very strongly. And those are things all going in the right direction, as far as I can see.
Look, I'm going to bring, thank you, Ghada. I'm just going to bring Tom Stretch on, who also replied to the survey. Tom, now, Ghada's already been saying a lot about positives about Andy Burnham. Would you like to add anything else?
Yeah, I think she's right. I think he's the only person who is the front runner who can do, you know, take over the leadership. And like Ghada said, he's being proactive. What we're getting right now is just reactive. Something comes out, Labour says something, and it isn't much different, right, than what's being said. It's a sticking plaster, right, for a short amount of time. He's planning to say, right, we're going to do this. He's done it with the buses. He's stood up to the Tories properly over COVID and things like that. I think a lot more people, I know a lot of people who would rejoin the Labour Party, who have left, who would reapply to join the Labour Party. Now, bear in mind, we've got two choices here. If we want progressive change, there's either going to be civil disobedience and unrest bordering on revolution, that kind of thing, or we do it the parliamentary way. And if we do it the parliamentary way, we need a leader that people can get behind. And as Ghada said, we need somebody who is personable and popular. And I think he fits that bill. Because
Right.
at the moment, I mean, Labour seems to be flatlining. We've lost 100,000 members, 5 million in the last year. It's not doing well, is it? Despite their efforts, it's not working.
Right.
Sorry.
Now I'm going to bring on Harriet Bradley, who's also replied to the survey. Are you there, Harriet?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. You're supportive of Andy Burnham as well. You'd welcome him as a Labour leader too, wouldn't you?
My view is a little less enthusiastic than those of Ghada and Tom, but yes, I think he's I wouldn't say he's the only choice. My preferred choice, who I think also could play a unifying role, is actually Barry Gardner, an incredibly able and very intelligent person, and somebody who's stuck himself out and worked with Jeremy. But my reason for supporting Andy Burnham is pragmatic, basically. I should say I've met Andy when I was a councillor in Brislington in Bristol. He was one of the many MPs that came down and helped and campaigned. And I liked him. I thought he was genuine and honest. He is quite a charming guy. He listens, which is very good, because not all politicians listen. He listened to us talking and explaining the situation. And he seemed to be, to me, to be decent and honest. Now, I have to say that I met some other people and I was fooled by them, like the ghastly serpent John Ashton and Angela Rayner, and I thought they were decent. So, you know, maybe I've been fooled again, but I've watched Andy carefully. And I do think what he's done in Greater Manchester, as has been said by Ghada, has been extremely good, particularly on transport. And that's really important. So, okay, so he's a bit opportunist, he swings around, but I think we have got to think about, as Tom said, the two routes that are open to us at the moment, because as Prem said earlier, we are facing a real social emergency. This is a disastrous moment in our history. Our country is literally falling apart. I mean, everybody who tries to get anything done nowadays, you will know, it doesn't work. Nothing works. The NHS is broken. We've got to, we need to fire on all fronts to get things sorted out. So I'm a great supporter of Enough is Enough and Just Stop Oil and the revolutionary street actions they're doing. And I think those are really important, and the unions are important too. But as Thomas said, we also need a parliamentary route. And the only practical thing that I can see at the moment, apart from, you know, as I said, Barry, would be Andy Burnham. And I think he's somebody that, as Thomas said, people would rejoin the party. I might even join the party. Now, why do I think it's so important?
No, hold on a minute. No, you've had a bit of a chance. I've got to bring some others in.
One more
point. If it's small, if it's short.
Yeah, it is short. The point is we've got to get rid of the Tories. And the only way we can do that at the moment, we haven't got a new Socialist party. We've got to have the Labour Party in. But many of us could not vote for Labour led by Starmer. So we've got to get rid of Starmer. That's the most important thing. That's my final point. Right. Okay.
Okay, you probably got lots of people behind you on that idea. Thank you, Ghada, and thank you to Tom as well. We're going to change tack a little bit because I'm moving on to Dr. Bob Gill, and Dr. Bob, you don't seem to be as keen on Andy Burnham. Can you? You've heard what was said. What would you like to say in reply?
I've heard a lot of optimism over experience, I'm afraid. No doubt Andy Burnham is a good performer, but I've been following the NHS privatisation now for over a decade. As part of that, I had to look at very closely New Labour, Blair Brown's record on the NHS. Andy Burnham held several posts in the cabinet. He was health secretary for the last year of the Brown government. What did Labour do in their 13 years in office? They put in more money. I accept that. Services did improve. But they entrenched privatisation. They saddled the NHS with private finance initiative debt. That debt servicing is contributing to the hemorrhaging of funding, which is meant for patient care, out into private sector profit. They doubled down on the marketisation. They outsourced health provision for the first time ever in the history of the NHS. Clinical provision was outsourced. Andy Burnham in particular, he, to his credit, he set off the inquiry into mid-staffs, which one of the key findings was how the marketisation of healthcare and the managerialism of healthcare led to cuts in frontline services, leading to preventable deaths of patients. But nobody went to jail over that. As Mayor of Greater Manchester, he has endorsed a program called Devo Manc. Devo Manc was the devolving of health and social care provision to a more local level, a precursor for the integrated care systems, which have now become law in July. And what are integrated care systems? These are new public-private partnerships based on American managed care, for which Andy Burnham has long been a cheerleader. He called for the scrapping of Section 75, the 2012 Act, and what that does, it removes competition and creates private sector monopolies. So unless you understand the detail, he can get away with sounding pro-NHS whilst also progressing the privatization. So he has in fact supported the creation of a US-style health system. And what he should be using his platform for now is saying, we made a lot of mistakes. We need to renationalize the health service. We need to take the private sector out of healthcare. But he's not saying any of that. So I'm afraid, given his experience, given his platform, he is not warning us of another cost of living crisis, a cost of dying crisis, which we're now seeing unfold in A&Es across the country. Estimates of 1,000 preventable deaths a month are happening because of the PFI-led downgrading and cuts to beds, and the PFI-led hemorrhaging of money, which New Labour are fundamentally responsible for in their 13 years. And Andy Burnham was a key element of those changes. So it's not good enough, I'm afraid. If you understand what's happened to the NHS, you will not fall for these warm words when his silence on the key issues is deafening.
Right. Now, that's really good that you've put those points across, Bob. Thank you very much for coming on. I'm going to bring on because we hear a lot about Manchester. Sorry, we hear a lot about Manchester and Andy Burnham's achievements in Manchester. I'm going to bring on Thirza Asanga-Rae, who is a member of the Momentum MCG in the Northwest. And in Manchester, there outdoors in Manchester, is it raining? It normally is out there, isn't it?
No, but I do have my brolly in my bag. So
well, that's what you always have to have one of those, don't you, in Manchester?
Yes, you do. But rain means blessing, so we're happy for the rain to keep falling in Manchester.
Yeah, well, that's what my mum says about her plants. Yeah. So, what do you make of Andy Burnham as a local Manchester mayor? He's your mayor, yeah.
Yeah, he is the mayor for us, and yeah, I'm a supporter of Andy Burnham. For a few reasons. I see Andy Burnham as a realist. I don't see Andy Burnham as one to back down or shy away. He will challenge and has challenged and pushed things back. I think one good thing within the Labour Party for our councillors is that, he thought that the councillors got something for the work that they do within the communities. There's so many things that he's challenged, and similar to me, has a bit of a radical stance to it that sometimes is necessary and needed. So again, rather than being reactive, being proactive on stuff, having that kind of vision and foresight based on what's being played out there in the communities. Now, I do some community organising within Greater Manchester, under Greater Manchester Tenants Union, and the level of disrepair, rogue landlords, you name it. And to be honest, you know, it's finding people who are accountable for all this, because these are our communities living in dire situations, not to talk of the living crisis now with bills and everything going up. So again, we definitely need a new leader, and I'd be one to support the proposal for Andy Burnham. Not everyone's perfect. We've had leaders that have done probably worse than what we're seeing now. But in terms of being a good contender and somebody that I would vote for, I'm a supporter of Andy Burnham, definitely for Manchester. He loves us.
Now, what lots of people are saying in the chat, I don't know if you can see that, but people, and as you heard from Dr. Bob just before, that his record on the NHS wasn't particularly good. He voted for the war in Iraq as well, I think, when he was in the Blair government. We are rather wary of people who who pretend to be something, like maybe have 10 pledges and then renege on them. And there's a lot of suspicion and fear about anyone who seems to be playing us, as in playing socialists. Do you think that that's a problem for Andy Burnham, that people won't take him seriously because of what Starmer's done?
Not necessarily. I think, you know, a lot of people, and what I try and do, I'm from Moss Side in Manchester. So again, a lot of my work is to try and get people politically astute and understand the political realms. It's not nice. There are a lot of things that are promised. There are a lot of things that are said and never come to fruition. And that goes across all of the parties, you name it. You know, it's somewhat like the carrot that gets dangled and we all bite. And then when we've took a bite, we realize it's a poison chalice. The fight is how we get better at making the right decisions. And I think a lot of the leaders previously and those that have come into power are fed information, sometimes without checking, without you know, bulletproofing it themselves. It sounds great, but is it great on the ground? Who are you consulting on these things, and so on and so forth? Who's engaging? You know, there's decisions made about various groups, and those groups were never consulted. They were never talked to. So again, you know, we need to get back down to the basics, back down to the grassroots, engage with people who are on the ground and not sort of sat in these I would say Eiffel Towers, but they're not even Eiffel Towers, but offices or rooms, wherever. Now we're in a world where it's Zoom, as you can see, but we really need to get back to the grassroots organizing and engaging with people in our communities and really finding out what it is that's happening on the ground and not just what looks good on paper.
Right. Okay. So you're right. Well, that's really good. Thank you for coming on. Good to see you. And I hope the rain.
Thank you. The rain will stay away.
All right.
Thank
Cheers.
you. All right.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go back to Ghada, because I want her to come back in on what she's seen from the chat and also from what's been said. And you know, there is this suspicion that he's playing us. Ghada, you must have seen all this before with people playing us. I mean, why would you think he isn't playing us at being this sort of socialist that will help us out?
Well, first of all, you've got to look at what he does in Manchester. The measures he's actually put in are socialist measures. So we've got, if you like, living evidence of policies that he has instigated and been able to carry through. So it's not a question of it, he's just promising and he's talking about these things, but he's actually got no track record of doing that. That's one. The second thing is, which I think is, I find naive amongst the commentators, some commentators at least. Look, this is a political game. To become the leader of a party, to advance in politics, you have to come across in certain ways. You can't afford not to be, if you like, attractive, You can't afford not to be likable. You have to play those games. And I think the trick is to distinguish between being a political operator, which I think Andy Burnham is, and between somebody who's absolutely honest, lovely, we'd love them, but it probably won't succeed. So sorry, I just want to say, if our aim, number one, is to remove Starmer, I think that Burnham is the one who has the greatest chance to do it, because he knows how to play those games.
Right. Because I mean, he's not an MP at the moment, but if there is a by-election, I suppose he could come on. I'm being accused of being biased to Burnham. So what I'm going to do is lots of hands up there. We've probably not got more than 5-10 minutes left to talk about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let people come in and speak. But if you can keep it to a minute or two, that would be good. All right. Thank you, Ghada. There's no bias going on at all, by the way. Don't accuse me of bias, because I'm not biased. I'm just trying to get a discussion going, and I'm pleased it's got people's backs up. They all want to talk. Rory, you had your hand up first. Hi, Rory. What would you like to say?
I think that the discussion has got misdirected. I don't think the issue is whether Andy Burnham as an individual would make a good leader, although I don't think he would. I think the problem isn't with Andy Burnham, it's with the Labour Party. And as someone who's been expelled from the Labour Party, I think it's what the conditions in the Labour Party would be like when the leadership challenge happens. And I think the unfortunate position is that if Andy Burnham were likely to be any good, they would make sure he didn't get in anyway, because the PLP has showed how thorough it can be about keeping out people with socialist credentials. And I don't think Andy Burnham would be regarded as a sufficiently socialist person to be that threat. But also, I need to see things like Andy Burnham saying things about the Ford report. I want to hear him saying things about Palestine. I want to see him saying things about the things that matter to most people on this programme. And I think he is now and will continue to be silent on those issues.
Right. Thank you, Rory. I think if he did talk about those things, probably be thrown out the party. But John, you're on now.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, John.
Yeah, I think Andy Burnham is Captain Black, pretending to be Captain Scarlet, in my view, coming to the rescue. And he's just come along at the right time. Actually came across him in 2014 on the 999 March for the NHS. And the leaders of the march, the organisers, asked him what he was going to do for the NHS. And he said, give it more money. And that they were kind of like really taken back for that, because they said, shouted at him, no, it's got to be renationalised. I was at a demo in 2012 outside Parliament about the bill, the first privatisation bill brought in by the Tories, and he's totally fake. He's just another Blairite bandwagon chaser, and in the end, he's just going to end up failing everyone who's a socialist, a true socialist. We need someone like Nye Bevan, Chris Williamson, but definitely not someone like Andy Burnham, who comes across like a knight on a charger at the right time, you know.
Okay. Right. I've got your point. Thank you, John.
Okay.
Very good point. I'm just trying to get as many people in. We've got Danny next. Danny? Are you
Crispin?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
I'm here, Crispin. Okay.
How's it going in Thailand? How's it going?
You're going to ask for a recipe, aren't you?
No, I just wonder if we could all stay there during the winter.
Well, remember,
yours?
this is the monsoon season, so it's early evening. I'm waiting for the big monsoon rains to come, which are far heavier than what they have in Manchester, you know?
Right. Okay. So we shouldn't moan about the
Come
the
now,
rain here.
come now.
No. Okay.
But
So what, are you a fan of Andy Burnham then?
no, I'm not really. But let's remember the situation now with after the previous conference change of rules means that we're very unlikely to get a Corbyn through with enough nominations from the PLP to actually have someone on the left standing. And if it was a choice between Burnham and Starmer, well, that's a given. You would go with Burnham. But let me just say, Burnham left Parliament, and we have to wonder whether he's really had a road to Damascus moment on the M40 when he went up to Manchester. He was a Blairite and a Brown loyalist. He boasted that he had never voted against the leadership when he was in Parliament in the government. We all remember his flip-flopping in the leadership election. It got embarrassing, you know. He thought he had the left vote, and when Corbyn got enough nominations, suddenly the left vote deserted him, so he had to try and be more left, but it just didn't work. It's a bit like Ed Miliband in a way. We know he became a fashion icon on the way up to Manchester, so maybe he has suddenly become a socialist, but I sort of doubt it. The big thing is, would the people that control the Labour Party at the moment even allow him to get into Parliament? If there was a by-election come up, would they make room for him? You know, if I was Starmer, I'd say no. You know, I don't need to import.
Well, he couldn't really. You'd have to suspend him or something, wouldn't he? He can't really just.
No, they control the long list and the short list. That's the rules that have been put through.
You don't think the mayor of Manchester would qualify? I
think they've got the rules on the NEC that they can just say no, he doesn't make it to the short list.
Right.
That's the rules as they are at the moment. You know.
Yeah.
There's the CLPs have no say in who gets on that short list, unless it changes at this coming conference, which I think there's a momentum rule change going through, hopefully on that.
Okay. Well, I've got to move on now because I've only got. But thank you.
I'd still say just the test of Andy Burnham is say, where does Andy Burnham stand on the people that have been expelled from the party? Our Labour International CLP Executive Committee has had 7 members expelled so far. So if they're not prepared to take a stand on the ridiculous expulsions that are going on, which are killing CLPs, then we shouldn't waste our time on these people.
I've got an idea. I think this will resolve the whole issue here. But I think the way to resolve this issue of if Andy Burnham's a good guy or not is if he comes on this show. If he doesn't come on the show, then I think we'll know whether he's playing their game, if you get what I mean. So yeah, I think that might well be the answer to resolve it.